You can change your entire life by just changing one habit. Subscribe to our podcast and make listening a habit.
Change your mindset, manifest your dream life, and live magically with Rise and Align.
Raising the frequency one episode at a time.
Everything is always working out for us. Hello and welcome back to the Rise and Align podcast, where we talk about all things high vibrational. We're your hosts. My name is Demi.
And I'm Haley, and today we are doing something a little different, but exciting nonetheless. We are talking about fantasy books or books in general, that have kind of changed our brain chemistry. Books and, okay, are these fiction books? I always forget. They're fiction, right? Okay.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, fiction, fake, I think. That's what I tell myself.
I'm like, nonfiction is not real, but just kidding, it's actually real. That's
yeah, I know,
like,
I know.
It's too long to think through that. Okay. So fiction books are actually an amazing tool to like manifest and to connect to certain emotions, because I feel like reading can connect to you on such a deep level and can truly help you feel emotions, which, you have to feel before you can manifest something. You have to like already feel like you're aligned with that energy. So I feel like this can be a great way to tap into certain emotions that you may have difficulty doing like on your own without, something maybe helping you.
So on that note, welcome to booktok.
Yes, booktok. Book Talk. Book talk.
So like Haley mentioned, good books especially evoke emotions in us. And when you are feeling, it is the conscious awareness of your frequency. It's what you're vibrating at, and it's what you're attracting into your reality. So if you are vibrating at the frequency of love, you're going to attract love into your life. Reading books can definitely be a love spell. I didn't date for many years, and I kind of forgot what it was like to be in love. So I started reading romance books, and now I have a boyfriend. But I really genuinely think like it really made me feel that feeling again. It reminded me what that felt like. It allowed me to kind of tap into my imagination and my dreams and just start to embody that energy in my life. And even just that is worth it. It's so good.
Yes. Oh, you said that way more eloquently than me. I'm like 2 drinks in an espresso martini and I can't think or talk anymore.
So one of the first books that I read was Every Summer After. This book is so sweet, and it starts like they're in high school, and it kind of goes into their adulthood, and it's very like, the feeling of summer, and you like look back at your past summers, and they're I don't know, we kind of romanticize summer, don't we? It's like summer is so much fun. It's such an adventure. You never know what's going to happen. It's very nostalgia like that. It's such a cute little story. And it was like realistic, believable. She was a good writer. So I do recommend this book. I thought it was really cute.
That kind of reminded me what I was going to say. So I feel like books can also help you instead of focusing on like, oh, like I miss summer, or oh, I miss like summer in high school, or like, just thinking about like, instead of focusing on the lack perspective, you can kind of explore these worlds where you can like connect to the excitement and the energy of that experience, instead of focusing on like, oh, I wish this or oh, that. So I think that has been a great way for me, especially like with the more fantasy books. I want to live in the UK, and a lot of these books like are in castles or there's dragons, and it really like connects me to this life that I wish I could be living like in the 1600s,
Yes,
like
absolutely. I feel like that's the best part of books, is that they can transport you to another dimension. Books are freaking magical, and I know we've read a lot of the same books, and so some of them definitely evoke this feeling of like bravery and strength in you. There are so many books that have crazy plot lines, and you're like, oh my God, are they even going to make it through this? And they're like, yes, they are, because they're strong and they can do it and they always win. It's going to be okay and they're going to live. And it kind of makes you embody that feeling like, yeah, things suck right now, but I'm going to get through it because I always do, and because I'm strong and I can. And it gives you that hope and that faith. It really helps you embody that. Like, you always have faith and you're the main character.
You are the main character. Yes, you are the main character energy. That's what this does. I love that. So one thing I want to say, I'm looking at my phone because I'm looking at my Goodreads account. And if you read a lot, you probably know what that is. But basically it's kind of a way to track like books you want to read, books you've read, and you can update your progress and have your friends on there and see what they're reading. And I like it because I started using this a long time ago, and I'm looking at like some really old books that I used to read like in high school and stuff, and it's just really cool. But you can also rate books and they can give you recommendations, and it's just an overall good resource. And I'm just kind of scrolling through. So the first book, and everyone knows what this series is at this point, but one of the first books that really got me back into reading again, because this was a passion of mine, like growing up, like I was always reading. I loved reading. I'd go to my friend's house and we would stay up all night reading books together, and like that was just, I loved it. And then I kind of stopped, and then I started reading mostly nonfiction books, mostly spiritual books, and it is just not the same as some of these books, because you truly get to, it's like a portal to another life, another reality. Like, it is just so amazing to read fiction. So the first book that really got me back into like this world is A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like, obviously we all probably know who it is, even if you don't, if it's not your vibe, it's just everyone is talking about it. I truly I loved this book and this series, honestly. And this author, she has, it's almost ruined other books for me, because she's so good, so good. And you build such an emotional connection, which I think is what makes it so powerful. And there is not one moment of reading where you feel bored and get distracted and want to do other things or whatever. You are all in this world. And I think that in itself is so special and magical. And I just love it. I love it so much. Fairies, yes, I need more fairy energy. And it is very much that courageous, strong woman lead who, I don't want to say too much, but
Am I the High Lady of the Night Court? I thought so until I finished the book and my life was ruined. No, I'm just kidding. She had more books, thank God. Really, she is probably my favorite writer at this point. The character development is unreal. Mm-hmm. I'm madly in love with these people. My heart was broken a couple of times. I have been through some shit after these books. Totally. I completely am convinced that I live in the night court, and I don't know.
I know.
It's rude that there's taxes here.
I know, and we don't live in castles or estates or
in my head I do.
The star,
in my head I do.
Pools of stars, starlight. But
Unreal.
That's the magic of it. You literally get to explore this beautiful, magical land, and you get to kind of create that in your head. Obviously the author kind of paints the picture for you, but it kind of forces you to use your imagination, which a lot of us have kind of suppressed because we're stuck in a routine, and you should be like this and do this.
Because we're taught, be realistic. Mm-hmm. And first of all, there are no limitations to reality except for those of your own imagination. Your imagination is the creation of all reality. Everything that has ever existed, physical reality, had to exist in someone's imagination first. Mm-hmm. Period. So when you are reading books, and instead of watching a movie or something, which can be nice sometimes, whatever, but when you're reading, you have to use your imagination. You have to visualize what's happening. And when you practice using your imagination, which is one of your higher faculties, and focus, which is another one of your higher faculties that allows you to create, which separates us from the animal kingdom, which makes us godly creators of our reality, those faculties become stronger. And that's why reading is so magical, because they're actually helping you to create your reality, to strengthen your higher faculties, and to have control over that. And when you start reading authors like her, Sarah J. Maas, your imagination becomes so vivid and so good at visualizing. Like, oh, I can't even.
And you think outside of the box. You think outside of the norm. You break up your normal thought patterns and stuff. Like, you begin to think of worlds that are more magical. And like, once you kind of do have that breakthrough of your imagination, like you just, there's a whole realm of magic to explore. And who knows, I think I can manifest that into my reality.
Yes.
So
yes. She's made me believe.
Anything is possible. And I'm going to continue to believe that and read more magical books like that. Yes, please.
Yes. Yes. And her imagination, I mean, it's top notch. And that's what makes the book so good, is like, you haven't seen a movie like this. You have never read another book like this. Like, this is its own world. And I am convinced it's a real place and I'm going there.
Literally.
Like, those books are my cozy place. They're my safe place. They're my happy place. Like, you can have the worst day and then read one of those books and you forget completely about it because you're so immersed in this book.
Yes. And it's like a cycle. So you were like, read these books, and like I read them all, and then I go to my friend and I'm like, you have to read these books. So she's like reading them all right now, and she's on the last one that's out currently, and I'm like you're like waiting for your friend to like
hurry
get
up
through
and read it so we can talk about it.
And now I'm like, you have to read Throne of Glass, and I'm like throwing books at her. It's just like the cycle, but I love that.
Yes, yeah, it's so much fun, and it is so much fun to read it with your friends, because then you're like, oh, we're having book club, and that's what we're doing right now with you. So I hope you're a reader. We're trying not to spoil anything for you in case you haven't read these books yet. If you haven't, what are you doing?
Literally.
Okay, so while we're on Sarah J. Maas, she has another series that is actually 8 books long. That first one I think is 5 books, ACOTAR. Throne of Glass is 8 books long. I am on the last book, and like, part of me is like, oh my god, I can't put it down, I can't wait to finish it, and part of me is like, I don't want to finish it. Like, I don't like, because they are so good. And you're like, oh my god, 8 books, that's a lot of reading, and some of these books are chunky. But let me tell you, I can't put them down. Like, I cannot put them down. They are the best thing that ever happened to me.
Literally. And if you read ACOTAR and you feel like your life is over when it's over, you just have to go to Throne of Glass. Like, it's a different vibe, but it's not at the same time. Like, it is just like, it's still gonna be like that same feeling, I feel like, where it's just like, you can't.
It's quite possibly more addicting.
Yeah.
Like,
honestly.
I love ACOTAR. And I have to say, the first book, if you read the first book, when I read the first chapter of the first book, I was like, I don't know if I want to read this. Thank God I didn't put it down. The first book is a little more vanilla. The last 4 books are so good. And then you get to Throne of Glass, and it's like even better. Even better.
Yes. Yeah. I know. I am a little more than halfway through the Throne of Glass series, and I'm putting it above ACOTAR. Hate me if you want, but I'm putting it above ACOTAR. Like, I love ACOTAR, but like, there's just something about Throne of Glass. And when I read ACOTAR, I was like, similar feeling on like the first, page, but I think it was more so just because I haven't read like a fiction book in so long, so I was like a little like not even sure what to expect anymore. But when I started reading Throne of Glass, I was like, what is this? Like, this is not what, I was just not expecting what I was reading. Especially, coming from ACOTAR, you might think like it'll be very similar. And again, it's like similar vibe, but a totally different story.
It's its own world, and it's its own plot line. Yeah.
But I'm like, what on earth is this? And then it's just like, it's like touching me deeper than anything has ever. Like, I'm obsessed. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
So, highly recommend. But I do think that if you are just kind of getting into fantasy, I wouldn't necessarily start with Throne of Glass. I would definitely start with Akatar. I think that is just like a more like beginner friendly to fantasy, or like, you know, a good introduction. Like it's an amazing story. I think Throne of Glass just goes even like deeper and darker and like, yeah.
I also like, they both do involve romance, but they also involve so much like action and plot twists and drama and like just interesting things that really keep your mind like stuck on it. Throne of Glass, it is really like a world. There are so many different people who you get to know really well, and I feel that even though a lot of the things happening are like fantasy and like we wouldn't believe that they would happen in our physical reality here now, because there's like, you know, dragons and magical things, but the emotions are relatable still. And I think that's another part that really keeps me hooked, is like, oh yeah, I felt that. You know?
You know, that kind of brings another point to me of like why I love reading so much. And especially when I was younger, you know, I was kind of in a way like a loner, or I felt very alone. And you almost get to feel like you are friends with these people. Like they give you a sense of like community, like you are a part of their world, a part of their journey. And so if you do feel alone, I think that books can be an amazing way to just like make you feel a part of something.
And when you feel that, you attract that into your life.
Yes. Amen.
So powerful. Yes. So back on the romance, so when I was in high school, I read all of the Gossip Girl books, probably actually starting in middle school. I was obsessed with these books. I remember it was like 8th grade, the first day of summer vacation, and I had a friend come over and I was like, hold on, we can't go anywhere. I have to finish this book. And she's like, are you kidding me? It's the first day of summer vacation. And I was like, no, I need to know what happens. Like, I was so addicted to these books. And I don't know, I stopped reading for many years. I stopped reading. And then I started reading, you know, spiritual books and self-development books, and they can definitely change your brain chemistry. They can definitely evoke new, like deep emotions and new perspectives and wonderful things. But when I was reading these self-development books, I felt like there was still a level of contrast, because it was me trying to better myself, me thinking that I needed to do more to get better, instead of me just relaxing into who I am. And that's the thing about like healing. It's accepting who you are now, not trying to change. You don't need to take another class. You don't need another degree or certification. You don't need to read another book or buy another something. Like you don't have to do anything. You're already good enough. And that's the thing.
That's such an amazing like point to pull all together. Yes. Like I think I've had that realization, but not super consciously. Like I don't think I like have consciously been like, oh, maybe that's why I'm like reading these, you know, it's kind of took a step back from reading the self-helpy kind of books. But that is so profound. And I have kind of made the unconscious decision, not totally realizing it, to only read those books when I want to, when it feels good to, not because, oh, I feel like I have to learn this, or I have to make more money, so I have to read Busting Loose from the Money Game. Like I'm not like feeling like I have to read this book in order to have this, but instead you're like reading those books because you want to, and it feels good to, and you know, you're expanding your mind. And so I love that point so much. I mean,
of course, still love those books. Of course, they have their place. It's wonderful to gain, you know, that knowledge and that perspective and learn from others, but only when it feels good.
Yes,
don't force.
It won't be as effective if you're forcing yourself to read it. Like if you're coming at it from a lack perspective, it's really not going to do anything anyways. So
yeah. So I think it was maybe about like 2 years ago, I hadn't read, like I said, in years. I don't know, like 10 years at least. And I had bought the Twilight books from Walmart ages ago, like 10 years ago, and I never read them. And they had gotten like water damage and stuff, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to read these books. Why not? You know, it sounds fun. Like, why not? Obviously, Twilight's a good movie. Like, millions of people like it and watch it, and millions of people thought the books were even better. So I'm going to read them. And I read them all really fast. And I was like, wow, those were good books. And then I was like, I want to keep reading. And then I found BookTok and I'm hooked. And I mean, after that, it just got me into these books, and it got me kind of back into myself, you know, kind of back into remembering that life is supposed to be fun and easy and wonderful and magical. And it's fun to fantasize and just allow yourself to imagine.
Yes, like, you don't have to be so serious all the time. That's like one thing that I continually have to remind myself, like, it's really not that serious. Everything isn't about like work or learning or, you know, doing. It is so fun to just like even just enjoy someone else's creativity and like explore your imagination. Like there's something so magical and special about that.
Yeah. Also, like we've said on every episode, your subconscious mind, which controls your actions, your physical actions, your body, and is also your emotional mind, does not know the difference between reality, dreams, and imagination. So if you can go live in this world that makes you so happy and excited and brave and just having the best time, your subconscious literally doesn't even know. And honestly, what is the difference? Because I'm not sure my conscious mind does either. How do we know that our dreams aren't reality and that our reality isn't a dream?
I think about that all the time. And honestly, when I think about myself being fully immersed in a book, nothing else exists. Like all that exists is what's in that world to me, which is so amazing. And just to add to that, we've talked about this in our nighttime routine episode, but we recommend reading books like this before you go to bed because your brain is in a more permeable state before you fall asleep. And honestly, I fall asleep reading most nights, and it's so good because that is what you're training your mind to like take on. So if you are reading a book that makes you feel good and magical and excited and accepted and loved, like that is what you're training your subconscious mind to feel. So that is a good tip if you are, or not if you are, but you know, just read your books before you go to bed. Read your fiction books before you go to bed because so
you read my mind. I was literally going to say the exact same thing. I was like, and go to bed reading because yeah, well also it's, you know, horrible for you to be watching blue light right before bed. So it's another wonderful way to just be present, focused, in physical, using your higher faculties, and what you're thinking about before bed will also impact your dreams. So along with your subconscious. So yeah, it makes it way easier to manifest. It feels so good. It's so cool. I love having cool dreams too.
And instead of dreaming about like, okay, sometimes I'll have like dreams about literally working. Like I'll be on my computer doing like my day-to-day work and I'm like, you know, once I started reading, like my dreams have become way more like magical and less mundane. Like your mind just gets less attached to like this mundane reality. And it just like, it really does teach you just more magical ways of being and thinking. And
the more your mind is in a magical place, the more your reality becomes that, because your reality is always reflecting your mind. Always, always, always.
Yes.
Okay. My next book recommendation is The Love Hypothesis. This book is another romance. It's not really fantasy. It's very realistic. It's a New York Times bestseller. This book, it's about grad school, which for me, so my bachelor's is in pre-medical science, and so this at one point was like a very realistic future possibility for me. And reading it, like my little nerdy self came out and I was like, I know what they're talking about, like I know what experiments they're doing, like this is interesting, because there was an aspect of like the author is intelligent, she definitely knows what she's talking about, like when it comes to science. I love when that's in books, like realistic like knowledge and things, which I have to say Sarah J. Maas in her books brings a lot of realistic knowledge. And also like we have an episode on Samhain, which is Halloween, and she's got that in her books, and she's got like different magical things but that are real, like healing herbs and different celebrations and like historical things, like things that are real. And I just felt like so synchronized reading those books because like a lot of those things were occurring or coming up in my reality as they were coming up in the books. But I felt that way about this book as well. Like, I liked to learn and read about what they were learning about. And then on top of that, she falls in love with this like really intelligent, hunky, loyal, like masculine man. It's good. It's really good.
So what's interesting is you like kind of talk. I think the last time we were together, you were talking about this, and I was like, that kind of sounds familiar, but I don't think the one that I read was The Love Hypothesis. But I'm looking; it's by the same author, Allie Hazelwood.
Yep.
And it's kind of similar because it's like, again, like the main female character is like a science girly, you know, and she does fall in love, and so it was interesting because I was like, that sounds familiar, but it doesn't sound quite right, but it's coming together for me now. So Allie Hazelwood, it was called Not in Love, and it was interesting. It wasn't like my favorite. I rated it a 3 out of 5, but I did like kind of that like sciencey approach to it, and it was definitely more like real world type of a story, but it was pretty good, I think. A similar vibe to these books are some Colleen Hoover books, and I've read a couple because I have a friend that just adores her and probably has read all of her books, and so she really wanted me to see It Ends With Us with her when it came out, which is now out at this time, and we did see it. So I read it, and I also read Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. And I kind of put off reading these books because I just love the fantasy world so much that I'm like, the more like quote unquote like realistic storylines, like I was nervous about. But I did enjoy them. I do feel like they're very realistic and very much so things that people could relate to, and potential like traumas that other people or that maybe you have gone through, or maybe you've experienced in relationships and things like that. And obviously, if you've read It Ends With Us, it is kind of a story about domestic violence in a way. And so it really brings about like very important topics that are worth discussing and important to discuss and to bring to light, you know, and not necessarily hide from. So I think that that's really important. I think that Colleen Hoover is an amazing writer. Again, like that story, that type of story isn't always like my jam, but I actually really liked these books. So I will say like it's definitely worth giving that a whirl if you haven't. And I think that they're good books to explore if you want like a love story, and if you want something that is a little less like fantasy style writing, I guess.
Okay, can you tell me, do they have happy endings?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, okay. They have happy endings.
Because I have a lot of friends who've read those books as well. And to me, I'm like, I've had enough of that in my real life that I never want to read anything like that. I don't want to evoke those emotions. I don't want to think about those things. I don't want to put myself in that place again. That said, I've heard that she's a really good writer.
Yeah, it's kind of like bringing shadows to light and like healing them, basically. The two that I have read. I want to read Verity. I've heard good things about Verity, so I don't know what the plot line is on that. But yeah, I guess I just don't want to give
too much away.
But the endings, you end it and you feel like content with the ending, and it doesn't bring about too many like negative emotions, I'll say. It's kind of more empowering and a little bit like, ooh, what's gonna happen? Like, that's crazy. Didn't expect that. But I definitely wouldn't read it if it was like bringing up negative. Like,
that's why I avoided them for so long, because I'm like, sounds bad to me.
I know.
But yeah, they're so hyped right now. Like, I am also curious. I'm like, okay, I trust your judgment.
I would say like 6.5 to 7 out of 10. Maybe I'll say 7 out of 10, just because she's a really good writer, but it's just like not my typical
It's
style.
No Throne of Glass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, if you're wondering, is our #1 series on this podcast.
No, I will talk about it, but I have a tied series for number 1.
Ooh, okay. All right. So the next one I would recommend, this is back to when I started with romance. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. And then also by Tessa Bailey, this is like a series, so the same characters are in it. Hook, Line, and Sinker. These books were so freaking cute. They were so adorable. I loved them. She's a really good writer. She definitely has like a very realistic vibe to her books, to her writing. And she will not only have you get to know the characters very well and their backstory and their emotions, but also you like fall in love with the townspeople and you have relationships with all these other people and you're like going through this like emotional transformation with the characters. And then there's like some spiciness in it, but with this hot guy. I fell in love with him in this book too, and then the second one as well, because there's 2 different love stories in these, but I would definitely recommend them. They're not really fantasy. They were more a realistic kind of story, but they were so freaking cute. And I also did like learn things from them. I think that's one of my favorite things about good authors is like they have a wonderful like character development. They have a really good plot line, and they really like you see the place where they are in your head. Like you see what it looks like. You know the people, you know the characters, and then there's also like you're learning in the book too. They're teaching you random different things, like
without having to have to go through that yourself necessarily,
which is really cool. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend them. They're really so cute, and she is a really good writer.
It's so funny when you're like, they were so cute. I'm like the cutesy books. I'm like, no thanks. I need like some darkness. I don't know. Anyways, I'd probably enjoy them, honestly. I think at this point I wasn't putting books on my Goodreads, but I went through like a Nicholas Sparks phase, so they're very like cutesy lovey little like romances, so you know, I did vibe with that.
I was trying to fall in love.
Which totally makes sense. Totally. So the other series that I'm absolutely in love with, and I think the main consensus is that people love this book, but some people think that the main character is immature, which I don't really see. I'm reading some other books right now where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't, this girl, she's like kind of immature, or she's like the same thought process over and over again. But I didn't see that in this book, but I will say I've heard other people talk about it in that way. And that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And I think I'm realizing one of the reasons I love this so much is when you read this, you will realize that it is inspired by Throne of Glass. And Throne of Glass is, you know, my tie for number 1. So as of now, Fourth Wing is my other favorite series. She should be coming out with a 3rd book, I think, later this year. And I love it so much. I could cry thinking about it. And I'm not crazy for loving it because I had one of my best friends read it, and she like, it's her favorite book series too. So I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. But it's basically a very magical, I don't want to lose it. It's basically another like very magical fantasy series, and it is a lot to do with like dragons, which I think is so cool. I'm loving the dragon energy, and it is the year of the dragon right now. So if you want like a book that is very authentic into what it's like to connect with dragon energy, I highly recommend this book. But it's also a very magical story that really pulls you in, and there's a lot of adventure, and there's love, and there's I don't know what they're calling them, like the shadow dudes or shadow daddies or whatever.
Okay.
Like, you know, there's one of those.
Sign me up.
So I love it so much. I could cry. So I highly, highly, highly recommend Fourth Wing as a fantasy series to check out. And it is another very popular series. So a lot of you may or may not have already read it, but I'll die on that hill. I love Fourth Wing to the day I die.
I just started it and I can't wait, but at the same time, like I can, because I don't want to read all the good books and not have any more yet. So, That said, we do have an episode on the Year of the Dragon. And if you are a fan of House of Dragon, which the last episode just came out, or Game of Thrones, you would love these series, like Throne of Glass and Aktar. If you like Game of Thrones, you will love these books. I promise you that. They're so...
Yes. I haven't read Game of Thrones, but obviously I've watched it. But I will say, and this can't be like confirmed again because I haven't read the series, but I think I like these stories even better than Game of Thrones. So if you love Game of Thrones, like, you will probably like love these. Just love.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I definitely feel like we can have another episode on this entirely. There are so many more books I would love to talk about, and I personally could do an episode on a spicy genre, but in this one we're gonna keep it rated. It's about R right now, to be honest with you, but not X. Okay.
I just want to talk about one more really quick, just because I literally just finished it and it's a totally different vibe. I just finished Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This book was written in the 1800s. How flippin' cool. Literally a time machine to the past. Because a woman wrote this book in the 1800s. So you can read a perspective from a woman who lived then, which is so cool. It is a love story, and I love reading the different like language. It's like a slightly different than how we would talk today. And you know, I did mention that I want to live in the past. So it was just so fun to like explore that world, and I'll leave it at that. It's so fun. So I recommend like checking out like antique books. Like go to a local like antique store and find a book written in the 1800s and give it a whirl. Like life-changing, so cool and magical.
Yes. I'm definitely going to read that one too. I have to. Okay.
But we'll finish this off. I think that this will be fun going forward to do book talk with you guys. And so share your favorite books with us.
Please give us book recommendations.
Yes. We're so excited to do this with you guys and to have a little community. And maybe one day we'll do a monthly book club with you. So with that, I think we'll finish off and make sure that you just find something that resonates with you and just explore the magical world that books have to offer. Okay, so before we go, I'm going to pull a card for you guys, so give me a moment.
We are pulling from the Moon Witch deck, our favorite deck. If you have watched other episodes with us, you've surely seen it.
Okay, well, she just shot right out of the sky, so
we know she's the one. Okay, 10 of Wands. In this card, there's a woman who's carrying 10 wands, or in this card, they really look like sticks, and she's got a cute little bow in her hair. There's a city with giant sand dunes in the back, kind of like the pyramids of Egypt in the desert.
Oh boy. Okay, so we did a tarot episode. It'll either be before this or it'll be coming soon. But I was just saying how, you know, when I pull a negative card, quote unquote, I'm like, oh, like, I don't want to share this with you guys. But at the same time, you know, we don't want to hide from the negative feelings or emotions or the negative side of things. We want to bring that to light. So
we are alchemists.
Yes, we alchemize the darkness into the light. So the 10 of Wands, the main themes around this card is burden, responsibilities, struggles, and burnout. So the 10 of Wands depicts a witch carrying 10 heavy wands. She's struggling. The city in the distance is far away. All the wands are tied together. They are no longer free or standing firmly on the ground or in the ground. There's no space between them, no space for creative ideas to flow. Though she has the strength to carry on and make it to the city with her heavy burden, her journey would be much more pleasant if she stopped, took a break, and came up with a new and more effective plan. It is also never a bad idea to ask for help or consider if the burden is actually hers to carry. We all have our limitations. 10 of Wands serves as a reminder to not put too much on our plate. Every idea is worth pursuing. Oh, lies. Not every idea is worth pursuing. Burnout is real. There is a famous Russian proverb that my mom used to say a lot when I was a kid, the slower you go, the farther you'll be. It's kind of like the tortoise or the hare. Meaning when we rush things, trying to power through without a good plan, we are more likely to make mistakes and get hurt. Sometimes those mistakes can take a toll on our health and erase all the progress that we made. So do not push yourself too hard. The shadow aspect of this card represents the opposite of its upright position. Your burden is being lifted, your workload and responsibilities are getting lighter. You have done the work and you know where to set your boundaries, when to say no, when to ask for help. You enjoy your freedom and happiness too much to let yourself burn out. Be proud of yourself.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, I think that speaks for itself, honestly.
Yeah. In our last episode, we did talk about how if you're focused on one thing versus spreading your energy throughout a whole bunch of things at once, you can definitely get more done and be more successful. So I think it's, better to kind of preserve your energy, focus on what is most important. We also have tons of episodes talking about how to increase your productivity and writing down lists of like what's most important to get done first, visualizing that, and then taking steps to do that. So I know for me, I have a list every single day and I write down all of the things I need to get done, but I will do the things that need to be done first so that I don't feel like rushed or like doing things last minute or like I have to do everything all at once, and it makes life a lot simpler and easier.
Mm-hmm. In the most recent tarot reading, we also talk a lot about the importance of rest. So if you allow yourself rest and create space for more creative, imaginative things to come to light, things will honestly be easier. Just because you're moving faster doesn't mean you're necessarily getting more done, or, things are going to come together faster, because you're going to burn out. Mm-hmm. And nature has a way of forcing you to rest if you are not doing that yourself. So a lot of times you'll get sick, or you'll have to force yourself to take a break even when, really important things are happening. You just have to stop because you're so burnt out. So nature, if you don't rest, if you don't allow space for things, nature will naturally make that happen.
Period. But, mic drop.
Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. And again, let us know your favorite book recommendations. And we can't wait to see you in our next episode.
We love you. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.